So for my next chapter, I decided to do infectious diseases manifesting in the nervous system. This is chapter 20. Some anatomical features of the nervous system include your brain, your spinal cord, your spinal and cranial nerves, your neurotransmitters, and neurons. So we'll get a little more into that in the next slides. First, we'll talk about your brain. As you know, this controls your thoughts, memories, emotions, helps you touch, your motor skills. Your brain is what controls your breathing and helps regulate body temperature. Your brain will tell you when you're hungry, even though sometimes we know we're bored and we think we're hungry, but we're not. And the spinal cord with the brain makes up the central nervous system. So next we'll talk about the spinal cord. This connects your brain and your lower back. This contains tissues, spinal fluid, and nerve cells. The spinal cord helps carry those electrical nerve signals throughout the body, and it directs the voluntary muscle movement. The spinal cord also monitors sensations of touch, pressure, temperature, and pain. Then we have the spinal nerves. These interact directly with the spinal cord. They modulate motor and sensory information. Spinal nerves are formed from nerve fibers. They extend from the posterior and anterior roots of the spinal cord. Next, we'll talk about your cranial nerves. So these nerves connect the brain to other parts of the face, neck, and torso. They play the role in sensation and movement. There are actually 12 cranial nerves, and they each have a name. These nerves control your smell, vision, equilibrium, and if any of those nerves are affected, it could cause smelling, hearing, or visual deficits. For example, your olfactory nerve is the nerve that controls smell. And if you were to damage that, you probably wouldn't be able to smell at all. Next, we'll talk about neurons. So a neuron has 3 parts. That's a dendrite, an axon, and a soma. So the dendrites actually receive the input from other cells. An axon will carry that electrical impulse from the brain to the rest of the body. And the soma is the part that supports the chemical processing of the neuron. Last, we'll talk about the neurotransmitters. So this is your excitatory and inhibitory. Your excitatory neurotransmitters encourage a target cell to take action, where the inhibitory neurotransmitters decrease the chances of that target cell taking action. Neurotransmitters have a relaxation-like effect. So when you talk about the nervous system, it has some natural defenses. So these natural defenses are there to protect it because the nervous system is such a vital system. So first we have your cerebrospinal fluid. This is the clear fluid. Then you have 3 layers of membrane called the meninges. The hard bones of the skull and backbone help protect your nervous system as well as the blood-brain barrier. So I know we've talked about normal microbiota throughout the body, but there is actually no normal microbiota in the central nervous system. because of that blood-brain barrier. It excludes most microbes. So meningitis is something that happens when the brain and spinal cord membranes are inflamed, and it's typically caused by an infection. There can be three causes. It can either be caused by a virus, bacteria, or fungus infection. Meningitis can actually be spread through coughing, kissing, or sharing utensils, toothbrushes, or cigarettes. Some of the symptoms are a headache, fever, and stiff neck. Depending on the cause, meningitis can get better on its own, or it may be life-threatening, which requires urgent antibiotics. Penicillin is usually the drug of choice for meningitis. So next we'll talk about inflammation of the nervous system. This is a rare meningoencephalitis. It's a rare condition where you have meningitis and encephalitis at the same time. An example of this would be West Nile, mumps, and tuberculosis. Encephalitis is actually inflammation of the brain, and it can be caused by herpes, West Nile, tick-borne viruses, or HIV. And then we have subacute encephalitis, which affects the central nervous system, and it's a viral infection that is actually related to measles. These are some diseases of the nervous system. We'll go into those a little bit in just a second. So you have the Zika virus disease, rabies, poliomyelitis, tetanus, botulism, and the African sleeping sickness. So the Zika virus is actually spread by the bite of a mosquito. You'll have symptoms that include fever, rash, headache, joint and muscle pain, and red eyes. This is linked to the Guillain-Barré syndrome. No vaccine is available. Care is only focused on relieving the symptoms. Next we have rabies, and this is spread through humans from animal bites. Usually dogs, bats, coyotes, foxes, and raccoons carry this disease. Symptoms include a fever, a headache, confusion, increased saliva, and paralysis. Vaccine can prevent infection, but once symptoms appear, the disease is fatal. So next we'll talk about poliomyelitis. This virus actually causes paralysis. It's contracted through contaminated water, food, or an infected person. Many people don't become sick with poliomyelitis. However, those who do develop paralysis, and that sometimes can be fatal. It's preventable by the polio vaccine. Tetanus, which is also called lockjaw, is caused by the bacteria Clostridium. Symptoms of this include painful muscle spasms and interference with breathing, eventually causing death. Muscle contractions are linked particularly to the neck and jaw, giving it its name, lockjaw. A vaccine can prevent infection, but there's no known cure. Botulism is a rare poisoning by toxins that attack the nerves. Symptoms of this include difficulty speaking or swallowing, facial weakness, and paralysis, mostly caused by improperly cooked food. Treatment would be the antitoxin and breathing assistance. Next, we have the African sleeping sickness. So, this disease is actually caused by a parasite, and it's spread by the tsetse, not sure if I pronounced that right, fly bites. Symptoms include a fever, headache, joint pain, and itching. So these tsetse flies are only actually found in rural Africa. And treatment involves drugs to kill the parasite.